So, welcome back to continuing the conversation. We've all heard that our brains are incredible, capable of astonishing creativity and problem solving. But what if I told you your brain is actually broken? Or at least wildly inefficient for today's world. Today, we're diving into a concept that might sound strange at first, but stick with us: thought architecture. It's not about AI tools or prompts or building drawings. It's about the fundamental reimagining how we structure our thinking in a world where information overload is crushing our cognitive capabilities. I know you're feeling it. I'm feeling it. I think we're all feeling it. So, to help us make sense of this provocative idea, I'm thrilled to welcome back my friend Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ.
Hello.
Rob, it's always a pleasure to have your perspective that challenges the status quo.
Thank you. Love being here.
Yes, and today's a good one. I'm really excited. So, the broken brain problem. I noticed you recently discussing this concept of thought architecture that seems to be emerging in your work. And before we dive into that, because it's a big one, can you explain maybe why our current way of thinking and the way our brains naturally work might actually be insufficient for the complexities that we're facing in today's new world?
Sure, absolutely. So there's a few things to unpack here, and I know we'll kind of get to it in succession. Um, what's most interesting that we have to contend with is this onslaught, as we've talked about so many times, of all of this information. And you have to you still have your normal life that it was as it was before. And now, just take yesterday, for example. It's March 26th when we're recording this. And we had a DeepSeek release, we had a Gemini 2.5 Pro release, and we had an OpenAI image release. And these weren't tiny things. These were, if this would have happened, 10 years ago, this would have been monumental and game changing and the world would stop. But it was just yet another Tuesday. And, our brains just don't, like, we have stuff to do. If you kind of, I don't always want to take the Freudian approach and look at how did we evolve kind of thing. But if we just look at that for a moment, like we didn't, our crazy lives and the speed at which information moves and everything else, that's a fairly recent phenomena. Like our body has had no time to adapt to this. And yet our brains are pretty elastic. So somehow they got really big without clearly having a lot of need. Because again, like the amount of information we have at our disposal now, you can imagine 2,000 years ago, you had the Library of Alexandria or something like that, where you could just sit in the walls and so forth. But you had one book at a time and you could pour through it. But now we have this stuff coming in from email and texts and phone calls and everyone's on at least 5 different forms of social media, all of which have their own, approaches that you have to kind of deal with. And, of course we say, our brain's broken with respect to, just to make this more interesting to talk about. But if you think about it, we're getting to a point where, we need help. And I'm not certainly, one way to construe all this that we could talk about here is like, are we talking brain implants and things like that? And no, I'm talking about good old fashioned, like, let's learn new skills kind of stuff here. We don't need to go all robo yet. We just need to, like, how do we change, like, what practices can we do? Like, what are the things that we might talk about? Like, how do we change it? And hopefully that's what this whole series has been about is how do we look at the world a little differently?
Exactly. I think you hit on it, right? It's not about robotic brains or brain implants. It's maybe just like restructuring or rethinking about our natural processing, the way we process information. I know for myself, you mentioned like different forms of social media and email and texting and news and newsletters and podcasts, right? It's a lot of information. So what is thought architecture? And so our natural way of thinking and processing, and we're all kind of struggling with this. So this concept of thought architecture, I know when I first heard you say it, I was like, whoa, what is he talking about? What is this kind of concept he's developing? And it sounds like something more fundamental and not just like another productivity system or a way of thinking. So let's dive in a little bit about this defining the thought architecture kind of thing that you brought to the surface this week.
Sure. Awesome. So I cannot take credit for the actual term. A buddy of mine, John Evans, who I've known for forever, came up with it. And he's struggling with, I think, this same thing all of us are struggling with, which is when we talk to leaders,
Mhm.
everyone's thinking about tools right now, especially because all you see are tools, right? You see your chat GPTs and your notebook LMs and your AI studios and Claude Council, like all this stuff, right? You just see tools. But this, we're so we're not really in the middle of a tool change here. Like, sure, there are new tools, but that's not what's going to be hard about this. What's going to be hard about this is a new way of thinking. It's a new experience that we've never had before. We've never had human-like capabilities available to us at scale 24/7. And so I think all of us, people who are doing AI transformations, people who are talking, yourself, Chelene, people who are talking to leaders, we're trying to find ways to broach this new subject, because people talk about Gen AI and they're like, yeah, chat GPT. And it's like, no, you're not getting it. Like, your job as a leader sure, it is to make sure your people have access to these tools, but how do you think about them? And
Mhm.
so where this came about is, especially like my background, when somebody talks about software, they always say, well, what's your architecture? How is it built? Like, what is the software architecture? What's your product architecture? So this kind of a notion of an architecture is very common. If you're not in software, you might think of architecture as like buildings and things like that.
Right,
And of course,
right.
that's where the ideas come from. But for those of us who work in software, you're always talking about the fundamental pieces, the building blocks, if you will, the Lego pieces of what is available to you to build something. So you've
Mhm.
got your curved edges, you've got your windows, you got your tall blocks, your short blocks. Like, what are the things that you have available to it? And I think John and his team came up with a really cool idea, which is, again, how do you get a leader to not think about the tool, but to think about the fact that this is something fundamentally different? And he came up with this notion of a thought architecture. Like, what
Mm.
is your thought architecture today? And what's interesting is most people don't think about it. Like, what
Mhm.
tools do you have available to you? What building blocks do you have available to you as you're working on things, so that you can think through problems, better, cheaper, faster? Again, a lot
Mhm.
of us think of the tactics that we're doing. Like, I have to go perform this thing, so I go into a document and do that or whatever. But there needs to be the idea. Like, where do the ideas come from? Like, how do you mature those things? And we have processes, right? So we have Agile and Scrum and all these kind of processes that we build. And I'm speaking again from a software perspective. And again, those are tools as well that you put into your process in order to get this stuff to work. But what's interesting about where this kind of came to me was, it was from an article of a mutual friend who was talking about a leader. And it's one of the folks that, not a lot of people have time to like learn new things. So when do you learn them? Like, most people now on your commute, while you're working out. That's why podcasts are so big now, is people are trying to jam all this information, this new information, in somewhere. Where does it fit?
Mhm.
And they were talking about how, when they're on the treadmill, they now can just talk with their AI and get some feedback. And that's one of those things. Like, that's a piece of your thought architecture. It's like, again, what are the components of the different things? Like, and even coming towards, physical activity and things like that. Uh, you know, Exercise is super important to like really kind of stimulate your brain to focus on a different task rather than sitting in front of a computer. I always get my morning epiphanies when I'm in the shower, just like literally the act of rubbing what little hair I have left, literally stimulates my brain. And again, like, that's part of my thought architecture, is my
Right.
workout in the morning. Part of my thought architecture is my morning, like, rubbing in the conditioner. Like, it actually is. If I didn't have that in there, there'd be something missing. And again, some
Yes.
of these pieces are some of these tools that we have. Earlier today, I was working on writing up a presentation, and I've gotten so used to having my charms provide me with new information, different viewpoints that I just didn't have, or I didn't have the capability of thinking about. And to be able to bring in different charms that have different approaches in the world and look at it and just give me a different perspective, it's like, oh, that's very interesting. So those are part of my thought architecture. And so once I think you have your thought architecture, like, how are you solving problems, then you can start to backfill with tools and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. From a software perspective, I get that I come from sales and leadership, change management, and I remember back in our Yahoo days, as we were launching products, this product would come to us and say, "We have this product, we've built it, you need to launch it," right? And so we would say, "Okay." We would look at the product, look at the overview, and we would get into like our war room, if you would, from a sales perspective and say, okay, like who's the target audience? We'd partner with marketing, right? How do we market it? Who's the target audience? Like all the tools that we bring into actually bringing a product to life, right? And to the world. And so that was part of our like sales architecture, is like bringing people, and we would have to schedule this. We'd be like a meeting of the minds, and it would be so challenging because there'd be key people that would be involved in this, but getting them into the room, into the war room, into the fishbowl to get this going. And I think like what you said about new technology and about AI, it's now we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait a week to schedule the meeting to get everyone's calendars open. We can actually have these very stimulating conversations with our team, whether they're humans or technology, immediately. And so you have it in the shower, I have it in my morning exercise routine. Some of these things come to me, and I have to be better at like jotting them down or remembering them. Yep. But I do love, and one thing that I did take from my time at CharmIQ is I don't have to sit at a keyboard and type. I can speak. And so now I literally don't really type at all. Everything is voice to text. And it's amazing, from an AI perspective, in the AI tools, this cognitive extension, right? And we're delegating tasks to and working with the machine that, it takes like a little bit, but then you don't think of them as just my dudes or my charms. I think of them as my team. And I actually give them specific names, right? Which is interesting. So let's get practical. You spoke about a couple things about when do these thoughts come to you, and physical exercise is really, beyond the desk. And I think that's, how does that play into our thinking and our strategy? Like that movement, how does that play a role in our brain activity and what our brains are actually when they do their best work?
Yeah, that's again, I always hate to pull the evolutionary angle here, but it is only very recently have we become sedentary beasts, right? Like you used to be out in the field, you used to be moving around, you were always constantly active. And I think our bodies are really, designed for that.
Yes.
I would just say, I think very differently when I'm at a desk versus when I'm standing at a desk. I know a lot of people that do the treadmill walking while they're typing thing. And I just know that when I'm stuck on something, if I get out and I start walking around and just you lose the focus and you bring it back and man, you get some different ideas that you never had before. And I would just, as always, we're trying to give some good advice to our listeners. And I would just say, if you're ever stuck or you lost in an idea, sometimes the best option is not to double down and staying at your desk, but get up, walk around, change perspectives, look at the world a little differently, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I think one of the better mentors I had in my life at Yahoo, when we were really stuck on something or challenged with something or frustrated, he'd say, "Let's take a walk."
Yeah.
Let's take a walk. And I'd be like, what, you want to leave the office? Like, we have to solve this now. We have to like get through this. He's like, we will. Yep. And so we would go on a walk, and it really did change our perspective. It changed the way we felt about it, right? If we were real heated, we cooled down, right? Kind of puts it all into perspective. So let's get practical. If someone is convinced that they need to develop their own thought architecture, which I think we all do, right? Where do they start? And what are some of the first steps toward reimagining how they think and how they work?
Yeah. So we are in the middle of a change process. It's, when you look back at so many of these changes we've had. So, as a developer, I started off software and then I moved up the ladder, and, we had waterfall and then we moved to agile and like all this stuff. And you're like, well, when did these things come about? Like, how did they come about? Like when you think about the advent of agile, like it was literally the Ward Cunninghams and whatnot of the world. Martin Fowler is just sitting down saying like, something's wrong. And we are at that moment. And it is so darned exciting that we're at that moment. Like we cannot keep up. Like the information deluge on and as technology gets better, it improves faster. We even run into this at Charm, which there's so many times where a customer will come to me and say, boy, I wish we really had this feature in Charm. And I'm like, that was released 6 months ago. And they're just like, I can't keep up. And I'm like, yes. I know I can't keep up. Yeah, so right. I think the first thing to recognize here is that like the source of the, like, look around, like, what is happening? We have to all stay in touch with what's happening because it's moving so fast.
It is.
Things are advancing so fast. So, like, we just have to embrace and acknowledge that, we all have to talk about how much we're willing to filter in and filter out and so forth. Again, as we always say, get your trusted sources.
Right.
And then I would just say this is an evolving process. We just started to come up with these ideas, things like thought architecture. Like, is that a useful paradigm to think about this, to think about the components of thinking, which is something that I was picture my 80-year-old father in my head. He's like, when I was a kid, like, no one talked about feelings and stuff like that. And I think that's going to be the same thing with our generation. It's like, well, when I was a kid, no one thought about what you thought about. You just did it. And now I think you have to, like, if you're not thinking about thinking, like, you're already running behind, like, your engine's got to be revved up to red line and you got to be running 1,000,000 miles an hour. So I would say, like, let's make this part of this evolving discussion. Again, especially people who are leaders and are talking to leaders. We are so desperately trying to get insights from you as to, we are leaders and we're busy, like, trying to figure out how do we change our day? Like, how do you carve out 5 minutes for this time? And again, as I mentioned, some folks are finding that the morning commute, turning that into a dialogue now. You used to just listen to the radio or music, and now you can literally talk to and have fully engaging conversations with AI while you're on your way to work, and then continue that on different devices. Like, that's a thing that we kind of always talked about and dreamed about, but, like, it's a reality today.
It is. Yeah.
And so you have to kind of look around at these things and see, like, again, which fit, which are helpful. And again, thinking about this thought architecture is like, well, let's even start to talk about how our thinking works. Like, it is sometimes organic and it just does sometimes bubble up, but you can if you talk to a writer who does it for a living and they have to try out stuff, they have a process. Like, it is not, they don't wait for inspiration to hit. Like, when you got a deadline every Thursday night, like you got to front load that thing. So they absolutely have thought architectures. And again, there's new pieces to that. But again, I think a lot of the rest of us we're a bit loosey goosey when it comes to what those things are. And again, I think this is just the start of that conversation.
Yeah. And I think for me, coming from a world almost 20 years at Yahoo where, AI was behavioral targeting. It wasn't tools that I used. I wasn't able to engage with the machines. And coming into it, I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose, right? Coming into this, and I was like, oh gosh, this is a whole new world. How do I get up to speed? What do I do? And I remember one time you said to me, and I said, well, I don't really understand. You said, ask your dude. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I could just ask my dude. And just getting used to having that relationship and that structure. Every morning I come to my computer. I look at my newsletters that I love, my source of truth that give me what I need, but I'm still sometimes really overwhelmed by the information, but I have a newsletter dude that helps me break it down Chelene style, right? I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect, but it helps me normalize the drinking from the fire hose. I don't feel so overwhelmed, and it feels a little bit more digestible, but that's a part of my routine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just, a small little tangent is so many people, and we talked about this on the last episode, people use AI transactionally, very much like that proverbial drive-through, just bark it orders. But it's not. Like, I think the way that you're going to see the most benefit from this tool is when you engage in a dialogue, and you can literally ask, like, what could I have, once you finally get unstuck, you can say, well, what could I have said to be unstuck faster? Or why do you think that we got stuck? Or how was I not seeing this right? Or how were you not seeing this right? And even though sometimes you may not come to a great answer, it's usually very enlightening to see those different perspectives, to redigest the conversation you've had. Some of the best prompts I've ever written were literally just giving it the result and asking it, how would I get you to give me this prompt?
Right.
So you can invert it. And again, I would say put that that's all tools in your thought architecture. Again, like, all of these things help you rethink a problem. It's not transactional. When Google gives you the wrong search result, you don't say, hey, why did you give me the wrong search result? Whereas you could do that now. You can poke your dude and be like, well, how could we have made this better? And what's almost annoying sometimes is that they're really kind and empathetic,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
when you're angry with them, they're like, oh, I see you're angry. Well, let's talk about this. It's like, oh, I can't be mad at
That's
you.
true. It's true. One of my favorite charms that I think I took from you or from Jackie was my cranky investor,
Mm,
right? We trained it to be cranky, not to be so empathetic, to really poke holes in things,
yeah,
to really challenge us,
it's one
right?
grumpy bastard.
Yeah, it really is. He's fantastic, though.
Yeah.
I absolutely love him. But so I think all of these kind of insights today are wonderful. Like truly, our brains aren't broken, but they're changing and they're evolving. And lucky, I feel lucky and I feel safe and I feel hopeful because I have these tools, I have these machines, I have this great team of support. So even when the most complex thing comes my way, I know that I have the tools to break it down, and it's not going to take me a week or a month. It's going to take me 30 minutes, 20 minutes, sometimes 10,
Yeah.
which just makes me a more productive, better version of myself, right? I'm not replacing my thinking. I'm not replacing my creativity.
No.
I'm not replacing all the things that make me me. I'm just supercharging them with the
That
help of my charms,
that is
which,
so important. Thank you for bringing it in. I can always count on you for bringing that notion in. Yes. So just as we're not talking about brain implants, and just as we're not
right,
talking about AI replacing your job, we're also
right.
not talking about AI replacing your thinking. This
Mm,
is to really augment and to unlock some of those abilities that you've always had, but you just, how many times does everyone said, oh boy, like I wish I would have, et cetera, right? And
mhm.
now you can ask those questions in a very comfortable, unjudgmental space, and ask the things that you always kind of wondered about.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful. Again, yes, this is absolutely not about replacing the way you think, or even like having it change you. The goal is to expand and to enable you to do all those things that you might have wanted and you couldn't or didn't have the time or whatever. So
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for Charlie and June, who are my kids, who are in, middle school and high school. I feel like they have so much more. I mean, it's like I didn't walk to school in my bare feet in the snow, but I had these super heavy textbooks and these big encyclopedias, and I did these amazing reports and research. But it took me weeks, right? And instead of it taking them weeks, it takes them just a few days, and it really amplifies what they bring to the table, and it challenges them to think a little bit differently and quicker. And I just love it. So, Rob, again, this has been genuinely mind bending. And I think we're only scratching the surface of this concept of thought architecture. You've challenged us to rethink not only how we use AI in these tools, but how we actually think ourselves and how we train our brains, like getting up from the desk, taking a walk, going outside, maybe even looking out the window. Even on our commute to work, right? Like listening to this podcast and making notes, right, with your AI and challenging us. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of this concept and what some of your thought architecture involves and some new ways of thinking. So thank you, Rob, and for everyone watching. I hope this conversation has sparked some uncomfortable but necessary reflection. And if you haven't started to think about reimagining your thought architecture, do that today. And I think the best way to do it is open a workspace and start the conversation, start the chat, and see where it goes. And let us know what you find out and what tools you're using and what's working for you. Rob, I look forward to seeing you next week. And for everyone out there, we'll leave our Charm links below to previous conversations and, of course, to the charm.iq website. Thanks, everyone.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.